Hi guys, how are you all today morning? Good morning. Today is 1st January 2024. I wish you all a very happy and prosperous New Year 2024. My name is TSV Raghavan and I live in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India. This is my spiritual vlog on YouTube. Hardan, 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 Haribol, TSV Nectar, NECTAR, Nectar. In this particular vlog, in all my previous videos, we have been discussing about the knowledge and information that we have gleaned through the study of spiritual books, scriptures, contemplation on the material universe, and meditation on the spiritual universe. This particular video in this vlog is no exception to that rule. In fact, it is a mere continuation of all that we have been doing in all my previous videos. So let us continue with the topic of discussion for today's video. For the past few videos, we have been discussing about a particular subject called mind, which is perennial to the psyche and life of every human living entity, whether male or female, in a lifetime in this material world. However, before proceeding further, let me request you to subscribe to this vlog and press the bell icon so that I may keep reminding you of all my previous, present, and future videos. So let us continue with our discussion of this topic called mind. In all my previous videos, we have been trying to discuss, study, and analyze this complex instrument called mind to find out how it works in the life of every human living entity, whether male or female, in this material world. We all know by now that every individual spirit soul is separate in itself. Every spirit soul is enveloped by individual layers of four layers of material body named causal body of intelligence and logic, astral body of mind, feelings, and emotions, etheric body of five senses, namely sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, and the fourth gross body, which constitutes of the final shell of a particular spirit soul's four layers of material body, and this shell is made of four natural elements, mean air, fire, water, and earth. In other words, after a spirit soul, an individual, raw, unevolved spirit soul is so enveloped by four layers of material body, it becomes what is known as an individual living entity. Hence, there are as many living entities as those individual spirit souls who have been wrapped up in a cocoon of four layers of this material body. Thus, there is a multitude of living entities in this material world at any given lifetime in this material world. These living entities may or may not be human in species. We need not discuss other living entities which include cell, algae, amoeba, weeds, creepers, plants, trees, worms, insects, reptiles, birds, amphibians, and beasts because they do not matter in our discussion. The only species of living entities that matter to us in this particular discussion about mind is the human species. There are 400 types of human species existing in this material world. A living entity may be born as a male or a female human living entity. The karma or destiny of every living entity begins only when he or she takes a first birth in this human species in any of the 400,000 varieties of human species. Thus, this endless cycle of births and deaths in this human variety continues for that particular living entity, adding a sanchit karma of each of these living entities unworked karma in any particular given lifetime. Sanchit karma is the storage of unworked activities, actions, and reactions of every living entity in every birth in this human species. Every human living entity has to go through a minimum of 50% of this 400,000 varieties of human species before he or she ultimately realizes his or her true purpose in life, and then he or she strives in the spiritual path to seek self realization, get liberated from this endless cycle of births and deaths, and finally gets delivered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of a mature, fully evolved spirit soul. This is the journey of life for every living entity, which is nothing but a parcel of an individual spirit soul wrapped up in a cocoon of four layers of material body. This we must understand fully before proceeding further. As I had mentioned, every individual spirit soul becomes an individual living entity, whether or not human or otherwise. We are discussing only about the mind of every human living entity. Here, I would like to remind you and assert that every individual human living entity, whether male or female, is equipped with one individual mind. That individual mind drives this chariot called the human living entity through one particular lifetime in this material world. It is this mind which is the driving instrument behind every human living entity that we are trying to discuss. There is a multitude of living entities in this material world in any given lifetime. Each living entity has a different destiny, karma, sanchit karma, prarabdha karma, kriyamana karma, and agami karma of his or her own. He or she goes through dark, negative, positive, and indifferent experiences throughout a particular lifetime according to his or her karma or destiny. Now, in this multitude of living entities, which constitutes of 100%, at any given lifetime, 75% of these living entities are still in the mundane, zombie like vegetative state, not yet realizing the true purpose of their individual lives. 20% are those who gravitate towards after getting attracted towards the dark negative forces of this material world. These dark negative forces have been existing in this material world for times immemorial. This is precisely like the vegetative state which has also been existing in this material world for times immemorial. Now we know about 75% vegetative state living entities and 20% negative state living entities. The rest 5% can be called the chosen ones. This 5% belongs to those who realize through various lives and lifetimes and births that they have come here with a purpose in life, and that purpose in life is something that they must focus in any given lifetime to achieve. This 5% constitutes of those who are positive thinking material living entities and positive thinking spiritual living entities. There is quite a possibility that one living entity may remain in this positive material lifetime and yet strive for spirituality. In spirituality, when a particular living entity gets into a path towards spirituality, his or her ultimate purpose in life is to get self realized, get liberated from the repeated, endless, infinite chain of birth and death in this material world, and then ultimately get delivered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead as an evolved, fully matured, experienced spirit soul. This is the idea of a life for all of us living entities. Now I would like to analyze this a little further. Every human living entity, whether male or female, in some birth in this time immemorial, started in the vegetative state. Thus, 100% of the living entities began their journey as human living entities only in the vegetative state. This vegetative 100% of human living entities is just like a tree trunk. This tree trunk later on, as it grows, diversifies into two branches. One is thick with 20% of living entities, the other is not so thick with 5% positive living entities. From this tree trunk of 100% living entities, some get attracted advertently or inadvertently by default or by design, deliberately or otherwise, knowingly or unknowingly, towards the dark negative forces of the material world. Only 5% diversify into this branch of 5% positive thinking, both material and spiritual living entities. Even here, among the positive guys, initially they tread the material path only because of their life in the positive state, birth after birth and death after death, through several lifetimes. They start getting into the spiritual path. Those who get qualified and liberated and ultimately delivered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead leave this complete chain of living entities, making way for future living entities who have got qualified in to get a place in this branch of 5%. This also happens in the 20% variety. Here, the thing is that a living entity may graduate in that branch of his choice to the extent that he or she ultimately gets qualified enough to be delivered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, either as a demon or a divine being. When you choose the 5%, initially you become a positive material human being, graduate into a spiritual human being, then graduate into celestial human beings, angels, divine entities, demigods, and so on till you qualify to be delivered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. On the other hand, those who gravitate towards the negative forces are born as interns in that line initially, then they slowly graduate into that line ending up ultimately as demons who also get qualified to be annihilated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thus getting delivered to the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, the ultimate aim of every living entity who is human, whether male or female, has only one goal, and that is to get delivered to this supreme personality of Godhead, either as a divine being or as a demonic being. But while the path through the negative side is quite difficult, complex, and painful, the one in the 5% category is a difficult, complex, but not painful, but enlightening and educative. This is just like in our own material world. We all are born as infants, graduate into being babies, then child, then adolescent, teenager, adult, middle age, and ultimately old age, and reach our death in a given lifetime. In this process, we go through a schooling that begins with play school, then a nursery, primary, middle class, higher secondary, complete schooling, graduation, diploma, professional qualification, MPhil, PhD, and so on. In other words, every highly qualified professional or an MPhil, a postgraduate, or a PhD also began his or her journey in this lifetime from the same play school in which other infants or babies are still trying to achieve their seat in that school. We all were infants and babies and children who spent our initial period just playing in our households before we got qualified to enter the play school, and ultimately through our schooling and education reach the professional or the MPhil or PhD or post graduation level. There is no exception to this rule. Yeah, there is a fact that from this tree trunk of material living entities, one graduated in one branch and the other into another. This is applicable to every living entity. Here, this mind comes into picture. As mentioned before, the mind of every individual living entity acts in a different form due to various factors, and the energies or vibrations surrounding in this material world. This makes this mind a very complex instrument. This is all I wanted to talk about in this particular video. Kindly let me know what you think of my talk on this subject of mind in this particular video. Please give me your own expert thoughts, opinions, ideas, and views so that I may blend everything together for the sake of this society. Before concluding, let me remind you that I am also a published author with Amazon Kindle and paperback. I write on spiritualism, fiction, and assorted subjects. Spiritualism happens to be my favorite subject. Till we meet in my next video, this is goodbye and good morning from TSV Raghavan.